Well, next, moving slightly up the age scale now, and new evidence suggests there's a gender divide, with young women far more likely to be out of work or trapped on low pay than their male counterparts. Here's our political editor, John Hess.
If you're between 16 and 24 and you're female and live in a city like Leicester, you're more likely to be a NEET, neither in education, employment or training. And it's not just happening in Leicester. So is there a new era of sex discrimination holding back our young women?
23-year-old Amira Patel gets ready for her working day. She's just started training as a teaching assistant at a local school in Leicester's Highfields. But getting that first step in a career, any career, has been a real struggle for her. She was a NEET.
I felt like I was dependent on my family, which you shouldn't be at the age of 18, 19. You shouldn't be dependent on anyone. Either you're studying, you're training, or you've got a job. So for me to actually have nothing and be doing nothing was difficult.
With a handful of college GCSEs, Amira hoped for an apprenticeship or to join the police, but says the job offers tended to be in retail, and attitudes to women shocked her.
I've been in one place where it was majority men, and the handful of women there were pretty women, and they were good-looking women. And when I left the place, someone had told me that women only here get recruited because the manager likes to look at them, really, and that's the honest truth. There's no other nice way of putting it.
All the main political parties have signed up to the need for more apprenticeships, but new evidence indicates it's much easier for young men to get those opportunities. In fact, there are a third more male apprentices than female.
Young women much more likely to be trained in jobs where there's high competition or low pay and insecure roles where they will be on 0 hours contract, in and out of work.
In the East Midlands, the number of young men regarded as economically inactive, that's without a job or training, stands at 91,000. And for women, well, there are 3,000 more, at 94,000.
If you compare young men to young women, they're doing double the number of types of apprenticeships, for example. It gives them many more options, and then the jobs that they go to are more likely to be better paid and more likely to be secure.
Once I've completed my apprenticeship, which is in about August, I do hope to continue to do a bit of further education, just boost my qualifications and hopefully go on to be a teacher.
Amira's now hoping to get the career break she always hoped for. But she believes being a woman hasn't made it particularly easy for her, and she believes many other women of her generation.
Some depressing statistics there, Nikki Morgan, and of course you champion women's rights within the government, and it looks really like you're letting them down.
Well, I think the first thing to say is that the number of NEETs overall has come down in this Parliament, and we have made a commitment to having no student leaving full-time education without having a job or training or an apprenticeship to go to. But I think what was quite interesting about that piece was about options and about young women being really well informed about the subject choices, the career choices that are out there. That's why before Christmas I said the government would back a careers and enterprise company, because I want employers and others to go into schools and inspire and explain to young people, here are all the options. And that's what I think that report was saying. Was actually women have got, or girls are perhaps seem to have narrow options. The boys have got broader numbers of apprenticeships they're applying for. Having said that, I was at a company in Shepshed on Friday in my constituency where they had 2 female apprentices. It was a business interiors company. They were doing very well. But I think what the report says, we've got a long way to go.
You have, because the official NEET figures for the East Midlands show that over the last 14 years they've only actually dropped by 2%, and that's of course across men and women. But it's hardly a huge fall, is it? 2% in 14 years.
No, it's not. It's
nothing to shout about, is it?
It's not a big enough fall. As I say, overall, the numbers they have come down. Of course, we've seen the last couple of years we have been through a huge recession, and that has undoubtedly impacted on job recruitment. But I think that the point about this is it's not just something that's just happened. Youth unemployment started to go up under the last government, but it is about broadening those career choices and saying to girls, don't count yourself out of certain things.
It's depressing, it's disappointing. What do you think, Gloria?
Well, remember that girls outperform boys at school. So it's particularly depressing that they're less fortunate when it comes to the jobs market. So what we would say is no young person should not be in education or employment or training. So instead of going on job seekers allowance, let's use that cash for a youth training allowance instead. So you're actually training, you shouldn't just be languishing. Let's check if you've got your skills. I think the job centres can be much more active actually.
But this was also happening under Labour as well, wasn't it, Gloria?
So what I'm saying, Mary, is what we would ensure is that a stopgap of a year, no young person out of work for more than a year. We're going to use a banker's bonus tax to get you back to work. Now, they do this in Wales, actually. 80% of those people who are on that 6-month scheme remain in work, and most of those jobs are in the private sector.
But one of the most worrying things, and I think one of the most disappointing things from the film we just saw, was that Amira Patel there, wasn't she, being very honest about her situation, telling us that she's been made dependent, really, on all the men in her family, on her father, on her brothers, on her husband. And you're both ministers for women and equality. How does that make you feel, to think that young women are being forced to feel dependent on men?
Well, I think, as I say, it's very disappointing. And I think what I'd like to know, obviously, if I were having Amira sitting in front of me, is to say exactly what career advice or inspiration did she get when she was at school? What options were, what subjects did she do? Because actually she obviously found something that she seems to like doing, which is great, which is being a teaching assistant.
It's been a real struggle to get there.
Well, it has been. And I think for a lot of our young people, and there's a fantastic scheme in Leicester called Talent Match, you know, we all know about young people who become very disengaged from the education system. They can't see the point of the subjects that they're doing, and that's why we have schemes like Talent Match 2020 in my constituency who do great work about engaging young people.
Is it right that young women like Amira should be so dependent on men?
No, of course it's not. And I'll tell you what I'm really cross about. When you were at school, when I was at school, when people who were watching were at school, we used to have work experience. That actually does get you to think about what you would like to do. Now, this government, they got rid of that work experience, and I think that's a real tragedy, but also something which
To be fair, it was very hard to get work experience even when I was at school.
But you had to do it. It was part of your curriculum. You do your, I can't remember, I'm up to what, now, a couple of weeks, but that's gone now. It's optional, and I think that's a mistake.
Well, I think it wasn't, and the problem was that sometimes it was just about ticking a box, and it wasn't actually about inspiring that
But we should get rid of them. Absolutely, it should be more than box ticking.
Well, I think the point is that good careers advice and inspiration is about more than just 1 week of work experience. It's about more than just having a careers advisor with a set of leaflets. It's about true inspiration early enough. I mean, the first piece is talking about primary age, and actually it is about making sure that young people really from the start of secondary are aware of the options that are open to them.
But this is a gender divide, isn't it? You know, is it right that we have this gender divide where you find that boys get on to bricklaying courses, which may lead to more secure jobs, and the girls may end up on a hairdressing course? No offence to hairdressing courses, they're great, but there's not enough jobs at the end of them.
And that's exactly what the report found, actually, that girls are funneled into a far narrower, far lower paid set of jobs. And that has got to change. But I would also say I'm constantly being told by local businesses, I don't know about you, I'm guessing it's the same in Loughborough, we don't have the skill set that we need locally. Now, I think there should be a governor, there's governing bodies in all the schools, I think there should be one that is responsible for ensuring that you work with businesses, as businesses come in the schools, and careers advice is much more focused to what's available locally.
The Young Women's Trust also, who released this report, they say they'd like to see a Minister for Youth Unemployment brought in. What would your take be on that, both of you?
Well, I think the concern about having a minister for something specifically, I mean, we have a minister for employment, Esther McVeigh. She's incredibly focused.
What about one having specifically for youth?
Well, because actually, I think you want it. If you have it just on that, then it becomes very narrow. We want the whole of, for example, DWP, or in my case, Department for Education, to be aware of the skills that young people need. But I think that is an important point about girls thinking perhaps some apprenticeships aren't for them, and that again goes back to getting the right advice early on.
Okay.